Hey guys, I'm here to introduce you to Imagine Yourself Playing Pickleball. My name's Anita and behind me is Marcella and John, and they're just hitting the pickleball back and forth. We're just here to talk about imagining yourself playing pickleball, and we're doing this video in association with the Boyd County Library Summer Reading Program. So let's get started. First off, pickleball. What made us all start playing pickleball? I came in a little bit later than these two did. I started playing about 3.5 years ago. John, how long have you been playing?
Close to 4 years.
4 years, and Marcella about the same? About 2 years? Okay, Marcella came in a little later too, but we've all become a very tight-knit group. Tommy's our photographer. He also plays. He's standing behind the camera right now, but he'll come out here in a minute. And let's talk about what made Marcella and John. Let's ask them why they got started in this. John, what made you originally get started in this?
Well, I was a tennis player for a long time, and tennis around this area kind of died off, especially in the 4.0 level and above. So I kind of lost interest in playing tennis, and then a couple years later, I saw some of my old tennis buddies playing pickleball at the Y. At first I thought that's a silly sport right there, but they told me, no, you should come. You know, you play tennis, you should be able to pick it right up. So I tried it and I did, and I've been hooked since.
Kind of drag Marcella with you into that?
Later on, you know, she'd been playing a little bit of tennis before with me. But when she started playing pickleball, she picked it right up again as well. So yeah, we're both hooked.
Yep. You see a lot of tennis players playing pickleball. You also see, I was more racquetball. So there's some racquetball players who converted. It's a little bit easier on your body. We normally play, you can play singles, but we normally play doubles here, and that's just because it seems to be a little more fun, a little less strenuous, but a little more fun too. So we're just going to show you some of the basics. You saw John and Marcella hitting the pickleball back and forth. That's just called dinking. That's just to get you started and it's a little different feel. We use a paddle instead of a racket, and the pickleball is more like a wiffle ball. It has holes in it. So it's a little lighter than a tennis ball, definitely. So you have to kind of get a feel for how to hit that. So I'll let them start dinking again. We'll talk about that. And then we'll go into some of the rules on how to play pickleball. So go ahead and hit it a couple times, guys, and show them. Right, so the first thing we're going to show you is John and Marcella are just dinking, just kind of a dink right there. And you notice how Marcella is kind of stepping in and over that white line. She's stepping into what we call the kitchen. That area, that 3.5 foot area between that white line and the net is called the kitchen. So she's trying to hit that ball, staying behind. If it bounces, she can step inside to the kitchen to grab it. If it's up in the air, she can't stand up in there and hit an overhead. And that's to prevent, that would be a terrible advantage if they could step up right next to the net and hit an overhead like that. And where it's a smaller court than tennis, you have to have some rules like that to keep it from being way too competitive. I'll let them step back, and I'm going to show you where how we serve, and we'll just kind of go into some of the basics like that.
All right, so in pickleball, your biggest goal with your serve is you got to make sure that you try to serve as deep as you can to keep your opponent back, because as soon as they return it, they're going to move forward on you. So the deeper you go, the best chance you have to keep them back. There's a few rules on the pickleball serve. Unlike tennis, where you serve overhead, you can't do that with a small court like this. So in pickleball, there's a rule to serve underhand. So basically, you got to hit it under your waist. So you got to hit it underhand when you serve. If you serve up here or up here, that's illegal. You can't do that. So they can call you out on that. So when you serve in pickleball, similar to tennis, you want to serve across. So I will be serving to Marcella on the other side. You say your score first. You start with 0-0-1, and then you serve.
Very good. That was good, John. Okay, and we'll talk about the scoring later, but that's just a basic on the serve. And honestly, sometimes the serving is probably the hardest part for people, I think, just to get that used to it. So let's walk around and we'll just show the motion of him serving a couple times so we can see how he does that. Yeah, actually see the motion of it. All right, we'll let you serve a couple times, John. Show him kind of how that goes, and then we'll...
You ready?
Yep. See how he does a nice smooth underhand serve, and his serve is very consistent, and that's kind of what you lean towards. So this is just kind of a basic in the serving. Very good. Very good. We'll do it one more time. Very good. All right, excellent. And as far as rules after you serve, so once you start playing, and as a beginner, it's kind of hard to get used to all this, but as a beginner, you know, there's a lot to comprehend because the scoring is kind of different, and the whole volleying back and forth and rules, and you know, just as far as the basics go, it's the big thing you want to know is you want to know how to serve. And then there's also a rule on receiving. So after John serves that ball, you can kind of watch him hitting there, he wants to serve it as deep to Marcella as he can, just like he said. When she returns that ball, there's a rule that he has to let it bounce before he can hit it. He can't run up and hit it in the air. It has to bounce. So if you watch again, I'll let him serve it, and I'll show you what they do. That's a pretty good little volley they've got going on there. All right, so we're going to serve, and then we're going to show how Marcella has to hit it back, and it has to bounce before you can actually hit it. So he serves. She returns it deep. If you let it bounce, now he can run up and do whatever he wants. You see how he hit that in the air? He can do that anytime now. That's nice. Very competitive too. That's a good display of playing right there. That's a higher level of playing. You don't expect to do that first thing when you go out. All right, so now we're going to see the angle from Marcella returning the serve. So she returned that serve deep as she could, and then she ran up. Did you notice how she ran up to that kitchen line? Remember, we called that line up there that she ran up to, it's called the kitchen line, and that area close to the net there is the kitchen. So the kitchen she can't approach. You notice how she keeps her feet behind that line. When she hits an overhead shot, if it bounced, she could run in there and grab it, but because she's so close up there, she hit it in the air, she did great. Now watch how she runs up there. Your best defense when you're playing pickleball is to be at that kitchen line. It's not to be standing at the back row, and that's the mistake a lot of tennis players make, is they want to stay on the back row and hit hard shots. Your best bet is up there. You notice how aggressive she can be with that ball when she's up close.
Okay, so in the last couple minutes we're doing this video, I'll talk about scoring. So we're playing a match here. This is a doubles match. I served, and we're just kind of rallying back and forth is what we call it. So scoring starts with 3 numbers, and I think that's what makes it the most confusing with pickleball, is the first number is always your score. So if you have 0, your first number is going to be 0. The second number is your opponent's score. So Marcella and I had 0, so my score was 0, 0. And then if you're the first server or the second server, each of the players gets to serve, gets a chance to serve it, unless it's the very first service of the game, and I'll explain that. But so I was the first server, so it was 0-0-1. When Marcella served, it was 0-0-2. You can only score when you're serving. We had a side out, so then it was John and Tommy's turn to serve. So Tommy's serving right now. They actually have 1 point, so it's 1-0, and he's the second server. So the score goes 1-0-2. What I talked about the first serve of the game, there's really no advantage. When you start a game, the 4 of you stand there and say, well, who wants to serve first? The thing with serving first is you only get 1 serve, even though there's 2 of you on the side, and technically for the rest of the game, both of you get to serve. On the very first serve of the game, you only get to serve the 1 time. So whoever chooses to serve first, in this case it was me, I could serve first, that's fine, that's great, but then I only get to serve it that 1 time. If we have a side out, it automatically goes over to John and Tommy. They each get to serve, and then from there on, if they didn't score and it was side out over to us, then me and Marcella would both get to serve. So scoring goes to 11 points. You have to win by 2. And like I said, you only get to score when you're serving. I also want you to take note of where we stand when we're playing. Did you notice I was standing behind the service line when I received? Marcella was standing up at the kitchen line. The server always has to stand behind the service line there out in the green. They cannot cross over. That's a fault if your foot touches that line. So now John is serving, and you notice both him and Tommy are standing back behind the service line. And the reason for that, if you remember, I talked to you earlier about the fact that they have to let that ball bounce when Marcella returns it. So they don't know whether it's going to go back to John or whether to Tommy. So both of them are advised to stand back. I was at the kitchen line. Marcella was back receiving, and now we're going to switch places. I'm going to stand behind the service line, and I'm going to wait for Tommy to send it to me. He's going to announce the score, the three numbers. They happen to have 1, we have 0, and he's the second server. So it's 1, 0, 2. He serves, I return, they let it bounce, and then I go up to the kitchen line and we start. So the last thing I want to talk about is the Ashland Pickleball Club that we're all members of. You guys are welcome to join. It's a great club. There's lots of events. We have tournaments. We have in-house tournaments. We have at the park. That's one of the advantages. You get a t-shirt. We're all also members of a group called WhatsApp, and we are all connected through that. And that way everybody knows where everybody's playing. We're either at the park or here today. We happen to be at the tennis center. Weather's beautiful. It's very social. At the park, sometimes you'll see 30 people. We keep 4 to a court and play a game. As soon as we're done with the game, we step off and let 4 others come on and play. It's a good little rotation. You get to play with a lot of people. You meet a lot of new people. As I said earlier, it's a very social event. It is a lot of fun. You hear a lot of laughter. And we do a lot of things outside of the club as well. We do take trips to tournaments. We've been to Gatlinburg, Cincinnati. Some have gone to Toledo. I mentioned the Naples tournament down in Florida. And as a group, they had 16 people go to the Naples tournament. So that was pretty neat for them. So if you're new to the game, you come on down to the park. Find somebody to play with. If you see any one of us, we've all taught new people down at the park before, so we're more than happy to help get you started. Join the Pickleball Club. Get on Facebook and join us. We're happy to have you. Also, thank you very much to the Boyd County Library System for associating with us. We did teach with them last year. That was very successful. We had a lot of people show up at the park down in Ashland for that.
Talk about the origins of pickleball. Started back in 1965. It's an old sport, but it's now become one of the fastest growing sports in the world, actually. And you can see why, because it's a lot of fun. We always have a good time. You get to meet a lot of new people. The one thing I say is you always want to make sure you have fun. There's a lot of competitions around the state, around the United States actually. There's the U.S. Open in Naples, Florida, and that's a big one. I've not been there. Both John and Marcella have. So that's about 4,000 people show up and play down there. So that's a big deal. There's also senior tournaments that you can join, 50 and older. So that kind of keeps you with your age group. You don't feel like you're playing with an 18-year-old and having to run all over the court. It does make it a little bit easier. So anything else you guys can think of? All right.
Come down and play.
Come down and play. It's like Marcella said. You said earlier about it, how you felt welcome.
Yes, I think one of the things that I love about our club is how everybody is very welcoming. And if you are new and you want to play, there's always somebody there willing to come and play with you.
We've all taught beginners, all 3 of us here on this side. Tommy did as well. We all met down at the park, and so if you're a beginner and you show up down there and you need a few instructional lessons after you've seen this video, please come down. We'll be more than happy to help you. So we thank you so much. Thanks to the library for associating with us and showing this video, and hope you guys come down and play. Bye. Bye.